It's Waxing Lyrical, baby.
Hello, Waxers, and welcome to Waxing Lyrical with Mains and Dutch. I'm your host, Mains, and my colleague, alone in the danger zone in Rainford, is Mr. Neil Dutton. How are we, Neil?
I say alone, the wind is absolutely howling away outside. It's ridiculously blustering.
This is old school upon old school, Neil, as it's a Saturday mid-morning / afternoon, so I assume we're driving to Skem later to pick up a KFC.
That would be lovely. And also, just in keeping with the old school philosophy, it's freezing in here.
Yeah, absolutely. We're recording on a Saturday, given the fact that my house is the sickest house in the world. So we have a show this week. We have Fantastic Weird World, which we will discuss now. A couple of great stories involving two hilarious situations around pizza, and also not giving people money. Then we also will get into Neil's interview with the one, the only, the Podfather, Matt Kelley, at fancy_mansion, leads with the road to Wonderworld at headhunterplayerprofile.com. Neil recorded that a couple of days ago. I couldn't do it because my son was in hospital. All fine now, just tonsillitis. But yeah, so Neil, so we will do that, and then that will be the end of the show.
Indeedly doodly. I don't know why I said that.
I don't know, but thanks for taking me back to 1974. So first, Neil, let's go to Weird World and things you'll do to not sort out your Super Bowl pool. State police say a Western New York man faked his own abduction robbery because he was short of cash owed in the Super Bowl pool. Troopers found 60-year-old Robert Brandel tied up in his pickup truck Monday in a parking lot 30 miles north of Buffalo. I think we all should stop there first of all. This is from March. He's 30 miles north of Buffalo. I think Buffalo is the coldest place on the planet. So 30 miles north of that must be the North Pole.
I think it's round the corner from the Fortress of Solitude.
Yeah. Brandel told troopers two men involved in his Super Bowl squares robbed him of $16,000, drove him round for 2 days, and left him tied up in his pickup truck. Investigators determined, I add parenthetically, really quickly, Brandel had entered some fake names in his 50,000 squares pool. I'm going to say around $16,000 worth, hoping to take most of the winnings, but instead ending up short for the payouts. So what we're trying to see here is, I'm going to create a game. You're going to all give me money. I'm going to take a little bit on the side, and then you're going to take the winnings. Standard fare.
Yeah.
However, the only way that game can ever fall badly is if you don't get enough people to participate.
Mm-hmm.
It seems that Mr. Brandel didn't, and decided the only way around it was to abduct himself.
Yeah, it's... See, the only way it could be stranger would be, say, if it was Florida. Because, as you say, it's essentially he's tried to Ponzi scheme his friends.
Yep.
His friends have realised wouldn't trust him with a penny. And then all of a sudden, the few people who have trusted him, it's bitten him on the arse. But give him his due. I mean, this all sounds like, this was a plan he came up with. Probably, this was a better staged plan than the Squares game was.
Yes.
So if he just applied this level of thought and commitment to the Squares game, it would have all gone fine.
I always look at this and think, the police found him tied up in the back, but he said he was tied up by someone else. So how has he tied himself up? Feet, okay. Hands, he's not going to have done it tight enough. Investigators probably found this out in about 30 seconds, especially if there was some other dude saying, "Has anyone seen Mr. Brandel? He owes me $16,000.
Yeah, or, there's some bloke, hey, some guy just gave me $500 to tie him up and leave him in the trunk of his car. Drinks are on me.
Exactly right, exactly. Dutton, you asked for Florida Man. You shall get Florida Man. This ticks so many boxes for you, Neil. It's a Florida Man story. It involves pizza, and then obviously eating pizza. So it's a good one. Hostage negotiation is never easy, Neil.
It's a good start.
Let's make that clear. You know, as most of us know, some places don't negotiate with terrorists. That's fine.
But then
However,
go on to negotiate with terrorists.
it seems
As
like,
in 24, where it happened every single time.
yeah, yeah. Just answer that phone. Oh, you just missed it. It's just stopped. That probably wasn't an important phone call though, so don't worry.
No.
In Pensacola, Florida, they do negotiate, Neil. A Florida man accused of threatening his wife ended a 4-hour standoff with police after he was promised a slice of pizza, officials said. A slice, by the way. The Pensacola News Journal reports Evan Charles McClure, 33, right in our wheelhouse, Neil, was arrested Tuesday and charged with resisting an officer and aggravated stalking. Police said officers responded to a report of a possible battery at the Pensacola home and found McClure had barricaded himself in a room. Officers said McClure claimed to have a gun, so they brought in a SWAT team. Crisis negotiators eventually managed to coax McClure out with the promise of pizza. It wasn't clear if he actually received a slice.
Okay, if all your demands are pizza, I'm sensing this could have been solved an awful lot quicker and with an awful lot less trouble to other people. But seriously, if that is what you've demanded and this is what's come to, I want the name of this pizza shop.
This must be good pizza, and the question is, what's he getting on his pizza, Neil?
This is the question, because I mean, this is not Papa Jeets. Let's be honest. This has got to be some serious pizza.
Like a hostage negotiation at that level, surely you'd be asking for pizza, I don't know, from Chicago or New York, depending on your pizza preference, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So the thought of like just saying, I'd love a slice of Mighty Meaty from Domino's is just not going to slide for me.
No, it's the idea of, we have, the tense situation. We've got the negotiator. He's got the bulletproof vest. He's got the loudspeaker. It's like, you've got to come out. Come on. We can end this peacefully. What are your demands? A slice of pizza? I'm sorry. It sounded like you just said a slice of pizza. Yeah, that's what I said. Sort this out yourself.
See, the thing is as well, though, like, you usually, like, work your way down. So did he start at like 2 slices of pizza and work to 1, or did he want a full pizza? Like for me, I want full pizza and I want buffalo wings, and that's my and I want a drink as well.
Yeah,
and that's my offer. Like you've got to get me down quite badly to get me down to just a slice of pizza, which it sounds like I didn't even receive.
Well, of course he didn't. He knew the risk going in. He knew that the best thing he could ask for, the very lowest to try and save face, was the slice of pizza, but he must have known in agreeing to it that he'd never get it.
Yeah, true.
Speaking of weird, though, as we move on, Case Keenum.
Oh, well, I was just going to say, before we get on to that, let's quickly, let's just say, if you like Weird World, we do, they're great. Then please send your Weird World over to us. At waxing_lyrical or at Mainsy7 or at ndutton13. The weirder the better. We do love them. If I'm honest, if you ever bored, just whack in weird news Florida. It's a deep dive for hours. Believe you me.
To be honest though, in keeping with the previous world, the weirdest thing about Buffalo this week, obviously, was not man locked in trunk.
Well, man would have had to have been locked in trunk to arrive in Buffalo, I think would have been the story, right?
I think so, yeah.
So let's get on to that, Neil. Before we go to your interview with Matt, let's go on. Obviously, it's now Saturday. Free agency started, although it hasn't. Proper weird. Don't really know how this works. It's like, legal tampering, like just cutting people and signing people, although I'm not allowed to sign you yet. You said it first. Let's go with Case Keenum. Deep sigh. Why do you? I mean, what you're paying $3.5 million for Case Keenum? Okay, you're basically paying. You basically just got that Spider-Man meme. Like, cool. The only thing that usually happens is Case Keenum stays healthier than Colt McCoy, I guess. If okay, like you haven't. But it's like that, it's easy to make fun of Washington. Believe you me, I know. And John has thrown a few dinghies my way for me to bite in the last couple of days. John Barshaw, greatest voice on the East Coast, that is. But I haven't, because I've been ill, and it's just depressing, really.
Yeah.
In my opinion, like I assume that the people are dead in Washington, all the personnel people, because they haven't rang up Arizona yet and said, here's the 45th pick. We would like that quarterback that you now decided is rubbish.
Yeah.
Please, thank you.
Yeah, you decide he's rubbish after 1 year behind an inept offensive coordinator, a rookie offensive coordinator, no offensive line, and no skill position players to help him. You've decided he's a bust.
I don't know if Josh Rosen's good or not. I actually don't know that. But you know what? For a second round draft pick, I'm willing to find out. And I am perfectly comfortable that Washington, at a lot of times, is a tire fire. But you know what they have been good at? Getting loads of yards from quarterbacks.
Except this year.
Except this year. Well, they didn't have quarterbacks this year. They kind of ran out. They ran out of quarterbacks. So, in the olden days, when Dan Snyder, really was insane, we wouldn't have our first round draft pick and our second round draft pick, and Antonio Brown would already be a Washington Redskin, and Josh Rosen would already be a Washington Redskin.
I mean, it's as you say. I mean, for what they've got Case Keenum for, I'll say, just according to this is the Roto World blurb. For Keenum's troubles, he's getting a $500,000 restructure bonus on top of his $7 million salary. To facilitate the trade, the Broncos have agreed to pay half of that. So it's that line from Moneyball, the movie. Oh, I forget which player it was. It was David Ortiz who, said, I think I'm pretty special. You're paying me $7 million a year. And Billy Beane says, I'm not paying you $7 million a year. I'm paying you $3.5 million. Your other team are paying you $3.5 million to not play for them. That's what this is what it's like with Case Keenum. You're that good. Your other team are still paying you to not play for them. Now, we'll say what you like about Broncos and Elway and quarterbacks. This idea, again, I talked about this with Damashek the other week. So they've signed Case Keenum, but some people are still saying, but they may draft a quarterback. End this crap. Bridge quarterback. Go away. Say Keenum and keep Keenum, or draft someone. Do one or the other. It's really getting on my nerves. And if it's, they still might acquire Rosen. Why?
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. Like, just do something. But in the quarterback situation, I really am in a world where go hard or go home.
Yeah.
Like, being in the middle isn't going to help you at all. It's just not. Like, so either be really good or be really bad. So if you think there's a chance that Josh Rosen could be, we know what Case Keenum is, right? We know what he is. He's meh.
Competent.
He is competent. That's fine. Excellent. Well done. But Washington are, an 8-win team. And I've been ad infinitum for the past decade. So you either need to change something and get some elite at one position. The only position that you can be elite at that will get you further up is quarterback. So you then either have to be really bad to get that position, or you have to get lucky into a position, and that Rosen allows that situation to possibly happen. I don't know if he's any good, but he was drafted in the first round and he didn't have any help last year, and now they're willing to get rid of him. I don't know.
Last year, Evan Silver and Matt Kelley did a podcast about the general dysfunction that had led to the Cleveland Browns being where they were. This week, they did a similar podcast about the New York Giants. I'm going to pitch them later today that next year's episode had better be about Washington.
Yeah, but that could have been like a 15-year episode. It's that's like a serial drama. Like, do you know what I mean? It's not just a one thing. Onto the Giants, Dutton. They cut Landon Collins bizarrely. Okay. They then, I guess it's swap, is it, Olivier Vernon for Kevin Zeitler, basically. it will help Saquon Barkley because the offensive line couldn't be any worse. But their defense has just lost its two best players.
Yep. And don't worry, Eli's still there. Because as they talked about, as Evan and Matt talked about, the only thing that matters to Giants leadership is keeping Eli Manning happy. That is the only thing that matters. And so we're only in, the 9th of March? I think Eli's quite happy. So, job done.
Just crazy.
The campaign that Evan called Mega, Make Eli Great Again. How's
it going?
Yeah, well, he's great. He's living La Vida Loca. The Giants suck, and it's call me callous, but it's hilarious.
Yeah, exactly. Any other news you want to talk about? And I suppose that the loss of Michael Bennett to the New England Patriots.
Bennett was good last year for the Eagles, and it was going to happen. And you can ask any Seahawks fan and any capologist what was going to happen after Michael Bennett had played slightly cheap but played well. More money, okay? Thanks, Michael. Hi, Bill. Yeah, we're going to cut him. Do you want him? Yeah, we'll take a 2020 draft pick. Thanks very much. See you later. Your problem. Do I think Michael Bennett will be good for the Patriots next year? Of course he will. It's the Patriots. The Patriots despise picking in the 5th round. Any excuse they can use to get rid of their 5th round draft pick, they will take it. You look, there was a great article Inside the Pylon, I think it was about 4 years ago, about what they do with their 5th round picks. And he's done it again in 2020. So it's a classic Patriots move. It means they will not sign Trey Flowers. Will I miss him? No. It was lovely, but let's move on. The Eagles have drafted quite a few defensive ends. They've still got Chris Long. They've re-signed Brandon Graham. Got Derek Barnett coming back. Thanks very much, Mike. You played your part. Obviously, though, if we're going to talk about the trades that did or didn't happen, we have to talk about Antonio Brown.
Well, do we have to talk about it? Because it depends who we have to talk. Are we talking about it from like Adam Schefter's point of view, i.e., the guy who runs this joint? Nothing to see here, never was, or like the Ian Rappaport position of he was basically in Buffalo about to sign on a piece of paper and then just decided he didn't want to.
Yeah. See, I've stopped following these people for various reasons. Well, I won't go into here. But if Schefter says it, I'll believe it.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, let's be honest, Buffalo are going to have made the call. There's a lot of teams will have made the call. That's why wouldn't you? He's Antonio Brown, and he's a massive, massive head case. But he also consistently gets, like 1,400 yards and loads of scores. So it's not necessarily an issue. However, I think there's a weird thing happening where we all think the teams are in control, and most of the time they are. But with really important players, they sometimes are not. And it doesn't seem like the Pittsburgh Steelers are in control in any way, shape, or form of the Antonio Brown situation.
No, they thought it was like, we'll trade you, but you'll go where we're sending you. And they've all of a sudden realised, oh my God, we actually don't have the power to do this. So again, but it comes back. They still have the cards because it's just like, we're going to trade you here. I'm not going there. Fine, stay here.
Well, this is the Lev Bell issue. This is the Lev Bell issue. Lev Bell isn't getting that year's money back.
Yeah, you don't turn up for camp. You don't turn up for practice. You don't play. We don't pay you. We do not lose here because you don't want to be here. So if you don't come, we don't pay you. In fact, they're going to be in a worse state financially if they trade him. If he doesn't show up, they save the money. And it's just like, well, what next year I'll go, no, because next year your contract told you didn't turn up. So eventually it's going to come, this pissing contest, which we were fucking sick of 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
It's going to get worse until someone just says, Jibby.
Well, I think final thing on this, Neil, he's looking for a team with a franchise quarterback, a team that's has got a chance to go to the Super Bowl, a team that is pass friendly, and a team that helps you pad stats. That team is probably the Pittsburgh Steelers. Yeah.
Although, one thing I say just before we go, why are people criticising the Bills? I don't understand. The Bills took a massive swing at something that would have made their team better. Why criticise them? Yeah, I know it's cold in upstate New York. We've said that. We've mocked them for it. They thought, probably high Pittsburgh. Yeah, we've got this package. What do you think of this? Oh, you'd like it? Great, cool. That's wonderful. Don't criticise them. Criticise this.
They've done what they're supposed to do, right? Which is try and get a franchise wide receiver to play with their second year quarterback. That's perfectly logical. Right. That's it from me and Neil. Now over to Neil and the brilliant Matt Kelley, the Podfather, at fantasy_mansion, to talk a little bit about gloating about Baker Mayfield, about running backs, about wide receivers, and so much more. Over to Neil and Matt.
Joining me now on Waxing Lyrical with Mains and Duts, it's Matt Kelley, the Podfather, at fantasy_mansion on the Twitter, leader of the Roto Underworld, head honcho at playerprofile.com. Matt, talk to me.
Hey, talk to you. I'm talking to you right now, Neil. I'm excited to talk a little bit of, I'm guessing, NFL prospects?
Pretty much, yeah. There will be.
Yeah, that seems like the topic du jour. After the NFL Scouting Combine is a wrap.
Absolutely. Well, first question we'll start with, because it's one that Mainsy wanted to ask and has been wanting to ask for many months. Are you still basking in the glow of being so right about Baker Mayfield?
Yeah, Baker Mayfield, man. I mean, it's a feel-good story. We knew that he was the best quarterback prospect in that class long before he was ever talked about as a number one overall pick. We knew it was Baker Mayfield, a clear gap down to Lamar Jackson or whoever you had at number 2. But it was a great pick by the Browns. They got it right. I'm not sure what the process was behind the scenes. I don't have access to see how that sausage is made. I don't want to know how it's made with John Dorsey. But somehow, some way, he came to the right decision and picked what many thought was an outlier, a quarterback that was Drew Brees' height. Drew Brees went at the end of the first round, or it was actually the first pick in the second round. So Russell Wilson also didn't go in the first round. So it would have been special just to see Baker Mayfield go in the top 10, but then to go number 1 overall was even more impressive. And it just speaks to how good he was at the college level. When you look at his production, no quarterback has ever been as efficient and productive for 2 consecutive seasons as Baker Mayfield was at Oklahoma, deserved to be the number 1 pick. And then shockingly, if you perform at an incredibly high level at lower levels of competition, then you're also most likely to be the one that performs at a high level once you take the step up to more difficult competition. It just makes sense that if you weren't productive at lower levels of competition, why would anyone think that you'd be more productive at a higher level? It's irrational. It's illogical. So it makes perfect sense that it would be Baker Mayfield that would be the most successful of the rookie quarterbacks based on his success at Oklahoma. And now he's poised to be one of the most productive NFL quarterbacks, a star in the league. He's top 5 in our dynasty rankings, playerprofiler.com/player-rankings. We have dynasty rankings, and he was well inside the top 10 throughout most of last season, and he's now pushed his way into the top 5 dynasty quarterbacks. He's difficult to trade for in dynasty for good reason. And if I had him, I may actually see what he can fetch in a 1 quarterback league. But in Superflex and in 2 quarterback leagues, that's a guy you would never think about trading.
I think it's the encouraging thing as well, just looking from the outside. Obviously, there's that guy with the brown shirt with all 25 starting quarterbacks they've had. As much as they have had a lot of quarterbacks since 1999, none of them have actually been good, whereas Mayfield seems to have been good pretty much from the get-go, which has to be the most encouraging thing for the Browns, but also for him moving forward.
That's right. Most of these rookies fail spectacularly, right? Jared Goff failed spectacularly. Carson Wentz failed. You just go back in time. fail. These rookie quarterbacks. I mean, Dak Prescott exceeded expectations. He was also a 5th-round pick, so there was no expectations to begin with. So anything he did was going to exceed expectations. Most of these early picks, especially first overall picks, have failed because, think about it, they're being drafted by the worst team in the league. They're not surrounded by a supporting cast that can propel their production. It takes a year or two for the entire roster to turn over. But with Baker Mayfield, he landed on a roster that was already stockpiled with some talented players from the Sashi Brown era, David Njoku in particular. And then they signed Jarvis Landry. He's a possession receiver. And they had Antonio Callaway stretching the field, but that was it. I mean, this, other than the satellite back in Duke Johnson and your seam field stretcher in David Njoku, there was not a lot of talent on the outside and at the wide receiver position. It's one of the least talented wide receiver cores in the league, and it's why I think the Browns are the favorite to land Odell Beckham Jr. in trade.
We'll get to the senior wide receivers in a minute. I do have these questions stacked up somewhere, but just moving on, I say, to this year's prospects. Just how bad is this class of running back?
Really bad. Yeah, really bad. When you look across the board at the average workout metrics in the 40, speed score, agility score, burst score, this class performs very poorly overall, and that's before you size adjust it. Then once you factor in size, it's even worse. Because you look at someone like a Devin Singletary, he's not big to begin with. So he's already profiling as more of a satellite back in the NFL because all these guys can't be the next Devontae Freeman. They all look like Devontae Freeman at best, and yet Devontae Freeman was an outlier. Very few running backs that come into the league that were not bell cows at the college level and were sub-athletes like Devontae Freeman ever post an RB1 season in fantasy. So Devontae Freeman was an outlier, and yet now we're relying on so many of these running backs in this class to fit to be the next Devontae Freeman. It's just not going to happen. Look at Devin Singletary. He's 5'7", 203, but he runs a 4.66 with an 1172 17th percentile agility score, and his college target share was 7.7% at Florida Atlantic. If you're Florida Atlantic, you're trying to get the ball in Devin Singletary's hands at all times. So a 7.7 college target share is highly underwhelming. So he was not a target magnet at the college level, not an impressive athlete, and yet by process of elimination, he's in a lot of top 5 lists, and it doesn't make sense. So David Montgomery, he flamed out with bottom percentile speed and burst. You just look down the list of running backs that we were hoping to see more from. We were hoping Damian Harris would be more athletic. He ran a 4.57. And just go down the list of top 10 running backs heading into the NFL scouting combine. Most of them failed to impress. A couple did. Darrell Henderson held up his end of the bargain, right? Darrell Henderson looks like some combination of UCLA running back. He's either Paul Perkins or Maurice Jones-Drew. I think he's in between. I think if you put those two in a particle acceleration chamber, out would step Darrell Henderson. Of course, he's not Maurice Jones-Drew, but he's also not as bad as Paul Perkins. He's a 5'8", 208-pound bowling ball running back who runs a 4.49, and he was more active in the passing game at the college level and was a dominant runner at Memphis. He's one of the few running backs that was a dominant producer and then ran fast. I mean, they're just very. He's the guy. There's like him and a couple others that you would consider dominant producers, and then he's the only one in this class that actually ran fast. And so that's him. You got him. You've got Damian Harris, as I mentioned earlier. Josh Jacobs. He knew that it'd be a process of elimination play. He knew that he didn't have to do anything. Just don't run, don't jump, don't do anything, and everyone else will fall down trying to compete with you, Josh Jacobs. So you'll be the first running back off the board by default. And then we have a couple other running backs that exceeded expectations. Alex Barnes, But then most notably, Miles Sanders, I think, pushed his way into the top 3 with 75th percentile athleticism across the board and solid production in his first year as the main primary back, with Saquon Barkley finally graduating Penn State. But Miles Sanders, Darrell Henderson, Alex Barnes, this is it. I mean, that's it, right? The comps for most of these running backs are bad. It's Kadeem Carey. It's Paul Perkins. You see that across the board. Even with some of the top 10 running backs, they have a lot of bad comps. The running backs outside the top 10, it's all bad. There are so very few running backs that comp to elite NFL running backs in this class. And that was the first thing that struck me, was how poor the comps were across the board with this class. And then after the combine, the moment those running back workouts closed, I knew, oh yeah, this is not the year to draft a running back in the first couple rounds of the NFL draft. And if there was ever a year that you could rationalize taking a wide receiver in the first round of your dynasty rookie draft, it would be this year.
I think it was just prior to the combine start last week. I read one report, and it was a bit. It tended to suggest to me that we weren't going to have a good combine. It was, the line, I think, was something like, "This will be a great year for linemen." And as soon as you hear that, you think, "Oh my God, what are we going to see here?" The skill position, the running backs are going to be nothing. The wide receivers are going to be terrible. Obviously, the wide receivers weren't, but just when you're focusing on, no, don't get me wrong, teams obviously need.
It's just a bad class overall. There are just classes where if you were an NFL general manager, you know that your draft picks this year aren't as valuable as they were last year. The talent pool is not as rich and deep. And the problem with the wide receivers is, after the Big Four, the Mount Rushmore of wide receiver prospects, there's a dip. And while it's very deep, it falls off very quickly, and you very quickly are in a territory where you have no idea really what you're going to get from wide receiver prospects. You're already making compromises. As soon as you get past the first two, because I really like two receivers in this class. I like N'Keal Harry. I think he checks all the boxes. I like A.J. Brown. I think he checks most of the boxes. So those two, I think, are the highest floor receivers in this class, and those would be the two I'd be most comfortable drafting in a dynasty rookie draft with first-round draft capital. And then for me, it's a question of taking a risk on an uber athlete, either from a small school like Andy Isabella, or that lacks college production, isn't a dominant college producer. And for me, I'd just as soon go with Paris Campbell. I think Paris Campbell was the most impressive athlete, even more impressive than DK Metcalf, and he didn't have that underwhelming agility like DK Metcalf showed. Also, Paris Campbell does have a 1,000-yard season on his resume. DK Metcalf has nothing close to that. And I also think that Paris Campbell's build, 6 foot, 205, with exceptional athleticism and versatility at the college level. He was used on special teams. He was used in the run game. So I think that he's a much better fit for the NFL spread offense, where they try to move these wide receivers around to create matchup advantages. He can really be a weapon and see the field right away as a rookie, where a Metcalf, a Butler, Hakeem Butler, Kelvin Harmon, those kinds of wide receivers, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, I just don't see those wide receivers being contributors or at least consistent fantasy assets as rookies. But there are a handful of athletic wide receivers that weren't necessarily dominant, but like Paris Campbell and to a lesser extent Deebo Samuel, who neither one, again, dominant producers, but have that build, that Jeremy Maclin, explosive Robert Woods build that you can see them being plug and play in the NFL in a lot of these Sean McVay style offenses that are popping up all over the place.
There was a Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast this week with Fran Duffy and Greg Cosell, and they talked about the role of the big wide receiver in the NFL now. The your big 6'3", typical X. It's he said that you look the names that they were going through. It was like doesn't do, the names. Yeah, he doesn't do anything. He doesn't do anything. He's the wonderful phrase. He's a red zone weapon, meaning he can't do anything else. And it just seems that these players that say coming through that are a bit more, they sound and look a bit more like projects now. But it seems to be that that's where teams probably want to devote their time to actually bringing these players on, rather than, in essence, wasting a pick by just sending out the lumbering cart horse to go and play at the X.
I don't understand the fascination with Hakeem Butler, for example. Hakeem Butler had to redshirt because he was so raw, and then he wasn't productive until, or at least he wasn't a dominant force, until his final season, his fourth year at Iowa State. So unlike Paris Campbell, who's competing with NFL talents for touches and targets, Hakeem Butler was it at Iowa State, and yet it took him 4 years of development before he could break out. How long is it going to take for him to break out at the NFL level? Why would you burn a roster spot on this guy and have to work with him for years in hopes that he becomes something? Look where did that leave Washington with Josh Doxson? Where did that leave Miami with Devontae Parker? You see these big size speed specimen project receivers, some of them drafted in the first round, and they never fire in the NFL. Whereas if you go with a wide receiver that looks like an explosive version of Jeremy Maclin, in the case of Deebo Samuel, or in the case of Ashton Doolin from Malone College, I know it's a small school, but these guys are prototypical NFL flankers. They're 6', 205. They can block. They can run the full complement of routes at the NFL level. So they have that full route inventory. They can be put in the slot. They can be put outside. They can run jet sweeps. They're just useful assets instead of being banished to the sideline or just out there as decoys. Really, Josh Doxson and Devontae Parker, they're just decoy wide receivers, right? And they look nice, right? They look cool. They look impressive when you see them in pads and they're 6 foot and they have, 99th percentile wingspans like Hakeem Butler. But then when the lights come on and the ball is snapped, they're rarely targeted. So I don't know what the fascination is with those players. I think the fascination with those players is more prevalent in fantasy leagues than it is in real life NFL, where you have coaches informing general managers, hey, here's the body type and the skill set and a level of versatility I'm looking for. I want a Paris Campbell. I want a Deebo Samuel. I don't need a Hakeem Butler. No, thank you. The Rams didn't have one, right? Rams didn't have there's no Hakeem Butler on the Rams. There's no Hakeem Butler on the Patriots, right? So why even bother drafting one? What's the use?
I think as well, just from watching the Eagles, just as an Eagles fan, just find that obviously Alshon Jeffrey isn't that tight. He's a bigger wide receiver, but when they play with their 11 personnel, 3 wide receivers, the guy they just stick out the big one is usually just Zach Ertz. It's just a tight end, and then they just let the wide receivers go and play, and then say if we need the big target on the outside, we'll just go with the tight end.
Yeah, you're hoping that DK Metcalf can become an Alshon Jeffrey type player. It's possible. That's why he's a top 5 wide receiver in this class. He's the one guy that has that Alshon Jeffrey in his range of outcomes. So you hope that by drafting him, he becomes that. But the downside is pretty significant. When you look at DK Metcalf, I didn't think he had an impressive combine because I knew he was going to be explosive. We knew he's a straight line-ish downfield playmaker. That's been established just based on what he did. Just look at his yards per reception alone. Look at that number alone at Mississippi. The question was, can this guy be a versatile playmaker, more of a Swiss Army weapon, a queen chess piece in the NFL? And the agility score shows you whether that's in his range of outcomes. When you look at an Andre Johnson, when you look at a Demaryius Thomas, Julio Jones, they also had upper percentile agility scores. That allowed them to become these target hog X receivers as opposed to more of, a Dante Moncrief type or a Martavis Bryant, where they're one-dimensional field stretchers. Yes, they make big plays. Yes, they score touchdowns. Yes, they are red zone weapons, but their target shares are down around 15% as opposed to being up around 25%, which is where you want a wide receiver for fantasy football purposes. And that's the real risk with DK Metcalf, that he sort of languishes in that 15% target share area as a one-dimensional playmaking and red zone weapon, as opposed to someone who has a full route inventory at his disposal and can get to that 25% target share. I just personally think that it's more likely that Paris Campbell gets to that place in the NFL than DK Metcalf, and that DK Metcalf, you shouldn't be surprised in 5 years looking back that he basically had Dante Moncrief or Martavis Bryant's career. You see a lot of these first-round wide receivers that are drafted primarily based on speed and explosiveness that flame out. We're talking about Kevin White. We're talking about Brashad Perriman. We're talking about John Ross, Tavon Austin, Darius Hayward-Bay, Ted Ginn. It's a long list of wide receivers that won the combine, in quotes, got drafted early, and never became the number one primary receiver for their teams, whereas a player like DeAndre Hopkins shows good but not great athleticism, but what he did have was exceptional age-adjusted college dominance, and that's something that a N'Keal Harry has. So N'Keal Harry has a DeAndre Hopkins and Michael Thomas in his range of outcomes, where I just don't see that for a DK Metcalf or a Hakeem Butler.
Obviously, it'd be remiss of me, if we're going to speak about the combine, to not talk about the tight ends, the big guys. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, it just seemed a little bit like there were the top tier who did really well, and then there was a lot of underwhelming players. I don't know whether that's atypical of your usual tight end class, or whether it's just that for the second time in 3 years we're blessed with some very, very special athletes at that position.
That's very common for the tight end position, for it to be top heavy, right? I mean, you have Noah Fant, he's the best, right? And you have the other guys, right? His teammate, is it Hockenberg? TJ Hockenberg? Hawkinson. So, it's rare that there's a tight end class where I'm interested in more than a couple of the prospects. So, a couple of years ago, it was David Njoku and O.J. Howard, and I was not even that interested in George Kittle or Evan Ingram, right? Certainly George Kittle impressed as a rookie, and then he put himself on a trajectory to become what George Kittle was last year. And, yeah, of course I love George Kittle. Who doesn't love George Kittle? But in that draft class, that was the best tight end class in the last 10 years was 2017. This year, it's more of a normal class. Remember, the year before that, it was Austin Hooper, and it was Hunter Henry. That's a more of a normal year for tight ends. Last year, we had Dallas Goedert, was really the only tight end that checked all the boxes. I know that Mike Gesicki got drafted early, but really that was based on athleticism more than anything else. Whereas Goddard was both an athlete that was also a dominant producer, over 1,000 yards at the college level. I would still take Goddard over any of these rookie tight ends in this class, but Noah Fant has the most impressive athletic profile that we've ever seen, I think, because he's at the 97th percentile or above in every metric: speed score, burst score, agility score, catch radius. He's only 21. He's a young 21, and he's 250 pounds. So if it were Evan Ingram and he's 235 pounds, then it's a shoulder shrug, because this guy's going to be used in certain packages, but not an every down tight end, not a primary a two-way tight end where you know he's going to be on the field on the 5-yard line, you know he's going to be on the field on the 50-yard line. With Noah Fant, he compares very favorably to George Kittle, but he may be such a good receiver because we don't know. His college dominator was 27.0%, 82nd percentile, but that was also while sharing a field with T.J. Hawkinson, another excellent tight end, a top 3 tight end in this class. So when you think about the teammate factor that Noah Fant was facing, that sort of headwind of another tight end commanding targets, and yet he was so dominant because of his ability to break tackles and roll up yards after the catch. You can see, just go to YouTube, you can see plenty of long Noah Fant touchdowns. He could be a more athletic version of Zach Ertz, and that to me is very exciting. The funny thing is that the Philadelphia Eagles already have a more athletic version of named Dallas Goedert. So Noah Fant's right up there with Dallas Goedert. He's right up there with David Njoku in terms of the best tight ends to come out of college in the last few years. I'm just not as excited about anyone else. It's very tricky with Hawkinson because of the presence of Noah Fant. You definitely put Fant and Hawkinson 1-2 because they were cannibalizing each other when you look at the production, and they were both impressive athletes. So for me, it's those two guys, and then I'm not as impressed with the rest of the class. Also, my dynasty teams, the tight ends are pretty much spoken for. I have Dallas Goedert stashed. I have Demetrius Harris stashed. I have Travis Kelce, or I have David Njoku, or O.J. Howard. For me, I just don't have a big need at tight end in dynasty. So it's going to be very difficult to envision drafting one of these guys. But if you're in a 2 tight end league or a tight end premium league, what I think is the most likely outcome is Fant gets drafted in the late first round because of the hype surrounding his exceptional combine. T.J. Hawkinson has also an incredibly impressive combine, 89th percentile burst, 87th percentile agility. So his profile looks similar to Ian Thomas and Dallas Goedert, whereas Fant looks more similar to Njoku and Kittle. But Hawkinson should be available in the late second round. That's when I would feel comfortable drafting a tight end in a dynasty rookie draft. You'll never see me burn a first-round pick on a tight end because I'd rather have Paris Campbell, or I'd rather have one of these sleeper running backs that I think, for example, Miles Sanders or Paris Campbell will be available at the 110. That's about where I think Fant's going to go, and I'd rather have Sanders and I'd rather have Campbell.
So we talked before about Odell Beckham, and Odell Beckham in his time in the NFL has been fairly or unfairly been portrayed as a diva. The last few months he's kept his mouth shut. He's been a good little soldier, and he's let the chaos of the outside world go on without him. Whereas Antonio Brown, who was always seen as the consummate professional, seems to be slowly losing his mind a little bit every single day. How much do you think Brown will look back on this time in a few years and deeply regret how he's behaved?
I don't think he's regretting it at all. I don't think he's lost his mind. I think that he sat down with his agent and they created a game plan to get him out of Pittsburgh, and it worked. They had to appeal. They had to nuke their relationship with the fan base and the teammates, and then appeal to the good graces of ownership. And that's what they had to do. And they did it, right? So you become toxic in the locker room. You become uncoachable. You become unlikable to the fans. And then you appeal to ownership's interest in doing the right thing. That's the move. That's the playbook to get out of there, to empower yourself. If you don't want to work somewhere, in most countries, you can just quit and go work somewhere else. He doesn't want to work there. He doesn't want to be there. But he signed a contract, and in the NFL, he has no leverage. It's a league where the players are not empowered like they are in the NBA. So he cannot agitate for a trade as easily as you can in other leagues. You have to take it to the furthest extent where, someone that doesn't have, the imagination of a Machiavellian character thinks he's legitimately going crazy. When I think that this is all part of the plan. He wants to leave. He wants to go to San Francisco and be the guy with Jimmy Garoppolo, a younger version of Ben Roethlisberger, with a better offensive coordinator, head coach, and I think that it's going to pay off for him. Maybe they end up trading him somewhere else. Maybe they end up trading him to a worst-case scenario landing spot, which is what we're hearing now, that it's all worst-case scenario options. But the opportunity to go somewhere and be the guy and be happy is worth it. If you're not happy somewhere, you do whatever it takes to get yourself out of there and be happy somewhere else. I think that's what's going on. I think it's very different than what's happening in New York, in that Odell Beckham Jr. is happy to be in New York. He likes the New York lifestyle. He likes the notoriety of being a star athlete in the biggest city in the United States. Who wouldn't? I think he enjoys the star power that brings, even if it means not winning, even if it means throttled production because your quarterback is Eli Manning. I think he's willing to take that trade-off to be in New York, but for whatever reason, New York Giants management believe that he is a problem, that he is a cancer, even though he is not. He is far from it. But he's been labeled that by New York media, by Mike Francesa, and the Giants owner, John Mara, listens to sports talk radio and takes his cues from Mike Francesa. So now you see Odell Beckham Jr. on the block, and that makes no fucking sense. But here we are.
It's obviously last year you and Evan Silver did the podcast, the chastising the Browns for how they've run or been run recently.
Hugh Jackson's Schematic Atrocities was the name of the show.
That's the one. It just seems like the good people running the New York Giants listen to you and Evan, and instead of taking your side, listen to what you were actually slagging off and said, do you know, that's actually a good idea. We should do everything they said we shouldn't, because that's how we win.
It's crazy, man. I don't understand what's going on. I don't understand how... Well, I do understand it. I mean, basically, the New York Giants were purchased for $500 100 years ago by John Mara's grandfather, and he was a bookmaker. He was a bookie. So he took bets. That was his job. So this was not he did not come from aristocracy, right? If this were the class system like you have in Great Britain, this would be the working class folk, right? Somehow purchased a golden ticket into the NFL for $500, and then the scion, Wellington Mara, the son, is often the most capable. And when you look at these dynasties, these family dynasties, it's often the second coming, the scion, that does the best work, and then the third generation is where things really fall apart, where you have an individual who grew up surrounded by wealth, was basically swaddled by the NFL and the New York Giants his entire life. He went straight to work for the Giants out of college, out of law school, and he's been living in that big blue bubble ever since, taking his cues from NFL sports media. So on the surface, it appears that the Giants are one of these old-timey, prestigious, well-run organizations. But when you actually see what's going on behind the scenes, there's no explanation other than that John Mara is insisting on organizational moves, that he is meddling, that he is forcing Ben McAdoo to reinstall Eli Manning as the starter, that he's insisting that they draft Saquon Barkley over who I believe will be a perennial Pro Bowler in Sam Darnold, and again taking cues from Mike Francesa instead of letting rational, long run thinking, competent managers, and player personnel professionals make these decisions for you. Even when owners take a step back and let the professionals make the decisions, the organization can flail. But when the owner meddles, then it's a guarantee that there's no way that you can succeed.
A friend of mine asked me today, actually, regarding Odell Beckham. If he goes, he asked me two questions. One, if Beckham goes to the Browns, do they become an instant contender? And two, what does it do for his fantasy appeal if he lands on the Browns?
Well, Odell Beckham Jr., he becomes the WR1 in fantasy football in the Browns, and the Browns don't need him to contend. They're already a contender. I mean, your friend needs to wake the fuck up. The Browns are already a contender. They are already poised to make the playoffs with or without Odell Beckham Jr. because they're going to upgrade the wide receiver position one way or the other.
I would love to, obviously a long-standing favourite of mine. I would like to see...
They should draft Paris Campbell. That's what they should be doing.
Well, Paris Campbell...
The Browns should draft Paris Campbell, or in the first round, that's where Paris Campbell's going to go, mid-first round. And he's from Ohio. I mean, it'd be perfect. Or they could go offensive lineman or cornerback, one of those positions of need, and then go Andy Isabella in the third round. And because I'm not sure Antonio Callaway is the answer on the outside as a field stretcher, I think that Andy Isabella is going to be a game changer in the NFL. That he has the best comps. Well, other than N'Keal Harry, all his comps are excellent, right? Other than N'Keal Harry, the best comps in our database for this prospect class, Andy Isabella. His number one prospect, his number one comp as a prospect is a close comp, and that's Tyler Lockett. His next comp is T.Y. Hilton. It's pretty impressive.
Absolutely. I'd like to see maybe Tyrell Williams, but that's just because I'm still carrying a torch for Tyrell.
Yeah, I think Tyrell Williams is better than Antonio Callaway. Antonio Callaway was awful last year. He led the NFL in drop rate. I mean, he's not good, but he developed. He improved, and he was young. So if you're a young receiver with above-average athleticism and you develop and improve over the course of a year, you, to me, earn an opportunity to continue your growth and development and carry that over to the following season. But that doesn't mean that the Browns shouldn't be upgrading that position. They have one of the weakest wide receiver cores in the league, so they need to upgrade. Tyrell Williams is one of the best. He's a top 5 wide receiver in the free agent market, and that just speaks to how weak the free agent market is. But he's nice in that he has a big catch radius. He can stretch the field. He's not a super versatile, nimble route runner by any means. He's not a guy that you can, run out of the slot much. He's more of a guy you want to put on the outside and stretch the defense, but he can make plays. We've seen him reel in contested catches for touchdowns. So he's done it before, and he's the type of player that can be unlocked to whatever degree, the maximum degree that he could be unlocked by a guy like Baker Mayfield, who isn't shy about throwing the ball downfield and putting it in tight spaces. And I think that signing Tyrell Williams and drafting a Paris Campbell would remake that wide receiver core without signing Odell Beckham. Certainly signing Odell Beckham is the most likely outcome because they keep shedding all the salary. They're cutting Collins. Jamie Collins was released. They're considering trading one of their best offensive linemen, which doesn't make any sense. He's only 29 years old. If you have a 29-year-old offensive lineman who is grading out as a top 5 at his position, you don't trade that guy. You do not. But they are considering doing it because it's John Dorsey, and he's going to make mistakes. That's what John Dorsey does. But why are they doing this? Why are they shedding all this cap when they have plenty of cap space? When they have $80 million of cap space, why are they shedding even more? Why do they need more cap space? Because they want to make big moves in Cleveland. There's going to be some big moves in the next few weeks. So I'm excited to see it.
Speaking of things that people should be excited to see, obviously last year we had the world-famous draft kit, player profiler. I know this is going to be coming back again this year. I hopefully will be involved. What can people look forward to if they weren't taken in by it last year? What would you say to people? That they're morons, I know that. But what would you say to get people on board?
For lots of new features, we're rolling back what we had last year. So we're rolling it back. We're running it back. So there's not a lot of, I shouldn't say rolling it back. We're running it back. Running it back, meaning we invested a lot in the draft kit. It'll be years before we make up our investment in the projection system. So basically we have taken what would be 3 or 4 sections of a magazine, what is often a sprawling online tool on a lot of websites. We really streamlined it to 2 distinct sections. We have player previews and we have team previews. The team previews are going to be written in partnership with RotoViz. RotoViz is going to take the lead in creating our team previews this year, including the signature trends and the vacated targets and all the interesting dynamics that are going on from team to team. Is their offensive line improving? Who are they adding in free agency? Who are they losing in free agency? What kind of pass to run ratio did you see last year, and what can we expect this year? And so looking at team dynamics and team trends from last year and what will carry over into 2019, our team previews, I think, were the best in the industry last year, thanks to Ben Gretsch. But now we have the full might of RotoViz crafting the team previews. So we have a lot more firepower devoted to the team previews, intellectual firepower, than we've ever had. So that's a big change. And then with the player previews, what we've done is taken a cheat sheet and made it a dynamic and comprehensive content embedded within the cheat sheet. So you see a top 300 list. It's not a 100. It's not 150. It's not 250. It's 300 players. So we featured players like Adam Shaheen and players that just never were destined to never. 300 players. You're going to have a lot of players that never fire. But it's interesting in a deep league or to see all the way down to 300 how far it goes, how far that rabbit hole goes. And when you're in that cheat sheet, you can export to Excel, you can print it out, but you can also crack open any player, and we have robust player previews and analysis as well as video analysis of those players. And we'll have about 50 cameos embedded in that cheat sheet doing the analysis, from J.J. Zacharyson to Brad Evans, pretty much a who's who of fantasy analysts from around the industry. Every few players you crack open, you're going to be pleasantly surprised by the face that's staring back at you analyzing. Matt Harmon will be doing Chris Godwin, for example. Davis Maddock will be doing Kenny Galladay. J.J. Zacharyson will be analyzing DJ Moore. So there's a lot of excitement this year as we run it back bigger and better than ever, but with all the the powerful and easy to use functionality that people enjoyed last year. We're bringing that back.
See, my favourite, most random player that I wrote last year was Raheem Mostert, which was, I remember a very good...
We had to add him late because Jerick McKinnon tore his ACL. That depth chart was wide open, and we had to write up Raheem Mostert.
I say,
It was our duty.
Yeah, I have a lot of time for Mostert. I remember his pre-season with the Eagles, so it was nice to revisit that.
Yeah. We're excited about the draft kit, man.
Absolutely. Last question.
You were a featured writer in it last year, and you will be this year too.
Absolutely. I say it was the of its type. It was the first time I've been involved in a project like that, and it was fascinating just to see. It was fascinating putting it together. Making the previews, doing the videos. That was a process. I've yacked away. Me and my illustrious partner, we've yacked away on this podcast for nearly 7 years, but we've never done anything video. So it was new to learn that. I hope this year when I do it again, I'll be slightly less wooden because at times it was.
There were a few videos that that were cringeworthy. None of yours, but there were a handful of videos that I cringed a little bit because the person looked like it was like a handheld that it was shaking. I didn't know where they were. They on the train? I didn't know where the heck these people were. They at Starbucks? I'm like, what are you doing? So it doesn't take much effort to studio-arize your little workstation at home so that it has at least an air of professionalism. And so my hope is that all the videos have that this year. We reached about 95% in the professionalism area last year, and so we're going to get a little bit better. Incremental improvements from the draft kit this year after last year's successful launch. It was a big deal for us.
Absolutely. I say looking forward to being a part of it. The last question, Matt, I'll get you out of here on this one. It's not something that I do an awful lot. It's not something that I don't think Paul does because of our busy time and our preferences. Sell us on why we should be having brunch.
Well, a lot of people think brunch is just breakfast. It's just fancy breakfast or a late breakfast, and that's mostly right. I mean, you're not typically going to get a sandwich or order off the lunch-based menu because what they do with brunch is they basically just combine breakfast and lunch into one big massive mega menu and say, hey, you can have whatever you want. It's 11 o'clock. Do what you like. And some places have brunch buffets. And this became a meme, this brunch, me as a brunch master general of the fantasy football industry became a meme when last year I was challenged to a one-on-one DFS contest, and I laughed in this person's face and said, I'm not even in front of my computer at that time of the day. I don't submit DFS lineups. I don't play DFS. That's not my expertise. Nor am I even in a position to do that. Submit lineups on Sunday morning because I'm at brunch. That's what I do. And yeah, so there's a bourgeoisie aspect to it in the United States, where that's what the upper crust tends to be out at. And speaking of crust, a very popular brunch item, one of my favorite brunch items, is a quiche, which is like an egg pie, and it's delicious. You get a good quiche is light and fluffy, and it just melts in your mouth. And I don't have the time throughout the week because I'm so busy with all my Podfather duties. Like, for example, Evan Silva and I will be rolling out a podcast on Friday morning breaking down the Giants. And that takes a lot of work. So I have to, eat a quick breakfast of, Siggy's yogurt, which is I think Norwegian, low sugar, creamy yogurt, and some muesli, like some whole grain granola, and blueberries. So I put that together, put that in a bowl, the most common breakfast that I eat. So I put together a pretty quick breakfast most days because I got to get moving. But on a Saturday or a Sunday, I like to take a breath, go to a restaurant, and sit down with a nice brunch, and it's good. You get some quiche, and you have some bacon, and sometimes there's some places have breakfast pizza. I had recently an egg wrap, or a breakfast burrito with pulled pork and egg, which was just spectacular. So I mean, it's just there's a lot of fun options at these places. And a lot of places are getting in the United States are really specializing in brunch. It's their thing. It's their signature. And so they really go all out around brunch. So I'm happy to be ahead of the curve on that.
See, we're pretty much still just restricted to people. It's just breakfast served till 11:30, and that's a lot.
Yeah, it's a thing, man. Brunch became a thing in the United States, and I'm at the front of that wave surfing, and I'm sure there are places in the UK where they're embracing it too. There has to be.
You'd hope so. Despite the fact we still cling to the whole used to rule a quarter of the world. We are still behind the curve, behind the eight ball.
What about Eggs Benedict? Is that a British thing?
We are aware of it. It sounds like something foreign. So the typical British attitude is to look at it with some degree of distrust.
Eggs Benedict. That feels and sounds like something that might have come from England.
I think it might be. The need for further research is clearly indicated.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Waffles. There's just so many things, man. There's so many good items.
See,
what's the most popular breakfast item in the UK?
Well, the full English breakfast, as it's known, is basically sausages, bacon, hash brown, beans. I think I'm leaving something out.
Oh, beans!
Baked beans, yeah.
Oh, baked beans in the morning.
Oh, and black pudding.
That's new. Yeah, that's new.
I
love a good hash brown. I like to get get a nice layer of canola oil there. Get a nice hot pan. Get that heated up. I actually add some butter in with the canola oil, and then drop those. And I carefully drop those potatoes. I cut them small, and then I carefully one by one flip them so they're all just the right level of golden brown. And you don't do any seasoning when they're in the oil. What you do, strain out the oil once they're all crispy on all sides. Then you put them back in the pan, keep the pan warm, and that's when I put the salt and the cayenne pepper on and the rosemary on the breakfast potatoes, and those are just dynamite.
Do you have black pudding in America?
No black pudding. I know that's blood, isn't it?
It's fried blood.
Yeah, we don't have that.
No.
We don't have. Thank God we don't have that. I tried it once. I didn't like it.
No,
I didn't like it. But you guys do sausage really well.
Oh, absolutely.
Really, I think sausage would be. My brother-in-law he's from Wales, and he makes his own sausage.
Wow.
With the casings and everything, and it's fantastic. You guys do good sausage over there.
Absolutely. It's not something we shout about because it has other connotations. We do sausage really well.
Yeah, you do a boing sounder.
Exactly. I'll have to invest in some sounders. Matt, it's been absolutely fantastic talking to you. Where can people find you?
Twitter at fantasy_mansion and on the World Wide Web at playerprofiler.com.
Thank you very much, Matt.
Yes, sir. Until next time.